Look at the adjective. Play.
And I have half the brain that you do. I told you. Oh, God.
Now is the franchise going to take the Viagra?
Gonna put some butts in the seat.
Hello there, wrestling fans, and welcome to episode number 95 of Because WCW, the podcast where the big boys play. My name is the Twisted Genius, Dean Ayers, and I am joined as ever by my co-host, the DAZN sports journalist, and what a week he's had this week, Liam Happ. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening to you. I did notice you didn't ask me how am I doing, and that's a wise thing because the answer was
going to be my next question of how are you doing.
I'm tired. Yeah, I'm tired, Dean. I'm knackered. I'm cream crackered. I'm exhausted. I'm jet lagged. I'm not really jet lagged because I've not been. I wish I was on a plane, but I have all the effects of jet lag without the enjoyment of going on holiday. So yeah, it's been exhausting, partly because of what you just alluded to.
Yeah, we'll come to that in a minute. Yeah, you gonna ask me how I am?
Fine. How are you, Dean?
Well, Liam, I'm knackered.
Oh, I didn't see that coming.
No, and do you know what? If we had been recording this podcast on any other day this week, then I could have answered that question by telling you that I'm knackered. It's just been a mental week, absolutely crazy week, just busy.
It has indeed been. Today was my day off of work, and yet I knew this was coming. It was no surprise or ambush, but I knew that on my day off I'd be constantly having to check my phone and oversee because I'm running the content team at the minute at DAZN. I'm having to just oversee. Right, did that guy? Is everything okay? Can we follow up with this? Can we follow up with that? All directing a bit of traffic, but all worth it because it was a big day for DAZN streaming because now we have Matchroom Boxing airing worldwide.
So this is huge because I know we're a wrestling podcast. We'll just mention this very briefly before we move on. But basically, Sky Sports have had Matchroom Boxing coverage. Well, I mean, I think since the 90s. I remember like Chris Eubank being on Sky Sports, and that was
the start of it. The Eubank was the start of it in the early to mid 90s. Sky has shown Matchroom Boxing exclusively since 2012 in what was a very controversial eyebrow-raising situation where the likes of I was going to say we had there was quite a few like Hennessy. Mick Hennessy still has a promotion. There was a very promising stable at Hatton Promotions, obviously under the name power of Ricky Hatton. They had a good little stable of talent over there, and for a lot of these companies, it was very dependent on having the ability to put shows on Sky. And when the 2012 deal was struck, it was right Matchroom and nothing else. And Hatton and a couple of the other ones couldn't carry on. And Hennessy's managed to carry on Channel 5. British viewers who have seen there's been occasional boxing on Channel 5, including a Sam Egginton fight very recently. And that feels like I'm bringing it back on topic because obviously being able to watch some of the fights on Channel 5 is a WCW thing because they had that deal on Channel 5 between 99 to right up to the bitter end.
And WWE, of course, have got highlights on Channel 5. And it's something that's notable as well because, of course, Sky Sports lost last year. They lost the rights to WWE in the UK, which they'd had since, I think, 1989. So we're definitely seeing a shift in sports broadcasting in the UK. And I think the fact that this is a streaming service as opposed to a TV service kind of shows the change in viewership habits.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had quite the upbringing in digital media and sports media overall. I've I've done a little bit of everything. I've done football match day programs. I've done newspaper reports. I've done commentary. You name it. I've probably dabbled in it a little bit. But obviously, the biggest specialty at the moment leans into the digital realm because that is the future. You need to be fluent in social media to get along. You need to be able to handle the quirks of platforms and things like that. So yeah, it's been quite the ride so far. I've been at DAZN for coming up to a year, and it's been fun just watching because obviously the actual service continues to grow, but the actual the content on the website has been experiencing even more of a growth from since I started. From
Yeah.
it was basically just a few little things a day, and now it's building up, and hopefully it'll go from strength to strength from there.
But we also must bear in mind that it is the reason for you being knackered. I mean,
Yeah, damn it.
curses to your paid work getting in the way of our hobby.
Yeah, I really hate this selfish reality of life with like families and life and jobs and money. Can't I just sit around talking about a defunct wrestling organization? I'm starting to resonate with the hippies, Dean. We should be able to just live free, love, and watch crappy WCW.
Yes, absolutely. I had a very lazy Sunday. No, Bank Holiday Monday.
It was that
I'd
lazy
been
you couldn't even remember
I
what day
couldn't
it
remember
was.
the day. Yeah, I had spent all day Sunday gardening, and therefore every part of my body ached on Monday. And I just sat on the sofa and I watched Wrestling Challenge from 1987 that they'd just put up on the network, including the Piper's Pit where Andre the Giant challenges Hulk Hogan for the main event at the WrestleMania. It
Look
was
at me when I
tremendous.
am talking to you.
That's the one. Yeah. And God knows how anyone employed Hulk Hogan to act in a movie after seeing that, because he was atrocious. But there we are. Anyway, we've got talking of Hulk Hogan. Actually, I've just realised, of course, this Nitro that we're about to watch from original air date of, I believe it's July the 8th. Yes, July the 8th, 1996. Not only is this the first Nitro that they tape at Disney MGM Studios, and they're there for a long old period of time, aren't they? Um, this is the first Nitro of the heel Hulk Hogan NWO era.
Yeah, everything's going to be different from that episode we recorded very recently, looking at the last Nitro. It's going to be very
Mm.
interesting to dive into this one. Obviously, if you think about the Nitro Watchalong era so far, there's been a few groans here or there, but there's also been some very happy memories. We've had Ric Flair's banquet table. We've had some really interesting matchups. It's been such a happy little wrestling show. And I
Yeah,
think sometimes when you think of how bad some wrestling companies can get, including WCW, multiple times in their tenure, you really do appreciate the times when they're kind of just putting out an on par, watchable product. You think, great, but we are now entering a completely different era, which just so happens to be the greatest run. So I'm
yeah,
gonna miss those little comforts, but strap in your seatbelts. This should be really good.
yeah. Now I haven't watched these shows for 25 years, but I remember when this was airing, because I remember 1996. I was in my second year at university, and I would get Raw and Nitro recorded by one of my mum's work colleagues, and either posted to me or I'd collect them if I was visiting. And I'd watch it in the student house that I was in, and other people. Wrestling's one of those things. You put wrestling on the TV, people tend to cast their eyes towards the screen. And I remember people being absolutely apoplectic with shock that Hulk Hogan had turned bad. But I also remember at least the first couple of Nitros. This goes back to what you've always said about the Poochie analogy in The Simpsons. I seem to remember that basically they did such a good job of making this feel like it was such a massive deal anyway, but the fact I seem to remember all the promos in the first couple of weeks were talking, they'd always make mention of what Hulk Hogan had done, and it was like the entire WCW organization was united against the outsiders and the NWO. And I also remember Hacksaw Jim Duggan doing a promo which very much sounded like, Hulk Hogan, you smoked my children, which obviously wasn't what he said, but that's what it sounds like. And I'm really, really hoping it's in this episode.
We could be about to find out. And yeah, you're right to an extent. This is absolutely the time to have everyone giving their reaction to what Hulk Hogan did. But then you look at the bigger picture and you realise that he pretty much made the company do that every week, and it was tiresome. And this is just a one time where it worked because we had struck creative gold with the New World Order storyline. But yeah.
Listen up, slapnuts. That's right. This is Jeff Jarrett, the chosen one, and you're listening to Because WCW. Now choke on that.
Okay, well, as I said, folks, we are, if you're wanting to watch along with us, then this is the episode that originally aired July the 8th, 1996. Liam, I'm on 000000.
Did you get all the zeros?
I did, all 6 of them.
All present and correct, phew.
Indeed. And we are moments away from some burning buildings before we go to the Disney MGM studios. So we will press play in 3, 2, 1, go.
Can confirm. Buildings are burning.
And babyface, yellow t-shirted Hulk Hogan is still at the beginning of the credits, which of course he will be because it only happened a day ago.
Yeah, I suspect that won't last too long. Although knowing WCW production values, maybe they'll get round to it in November. Oh wow! I tell you what, straight away it catches your eye. This setting, doesn't it? We've got daylight.
I mean, it's day, which probably means we're going to get the old daylight turning into dusk, which always looks great on a wrestling show. But
yeah, I always think of WrestleMania 3, which we kind of half referred to earlier, didn't we?
Yeah.
Watching WrestleMania 3 and it starts in the daylight, and then you've got the darkness for Hulk Andre. I love that.
I mean, this kind of looks. I mean, it's weird. And on the one hand, it looks a bit low rent and small, but then this became iconic, I think, because of what happened, which is what Tony Schiavone is currently talking about.
Yeah, this is the first time we're hearing from Schiavone since in the timeline.
Go to hell.
Go to hell. Yeah. And he's struggling to bring himself to say it. He's stammering like Michael McGillicuddy doing his NXT Genesis promo. But in this instance, it's actually completely on brand and understandable.
And what's great here is Schiavone is basically staring at the camera with his arms folded. He's got a pout on his face. He looks like, I'm sure if you've had to tell your daughter off, she's probably pulled a face like that. You know, that pouting, angry child look, and it works. It works here. It's brilliant.
Yeah, so we have hated heels on every show, but I suppose right now we're dealing with this premise that like guys like the Horsemen and other top heels, they rally up together, they break the rules to make more money to win the championships within WCW. But the outsiders and Hulk Hogan have now declared war on the entire company. So now there's a reason why even Zbyszko, the heel commentator, is extremely, look at that furrowed brow.
Exactly. It's not baby faces and heels anymore. It's WCW against the outsiders.
It's such a shame they lost track of that going on because as you've seen some of the interviews with Bischoff, he seemed to get really obsessed with the idea that he could launch the NWO as its own thing. And that was never really the idea of them. This isn't movies where you can get away with maybe one quick movie with Hobbs and Shaw or Deadpool or someone as the protagonist. You're going to run a wrestling promotion. There's no point to it.
Yeah, and I think the thing that people seem to sometimes forget with these invaders or whatever it is you want to brand them as, the stereotypical promo of I'm going to take this promotion apart brick by brick, that kind of thing, which we've seen in British wrestling, we've seen elsewhere. Yeah. It's like, well, if you want to destroy WCW, why would you do that? Because then you've lost your job because you work for them. So it's got to have a purpose. It could be if it's a rival promotion, they want to get rid of their competition. So I suppose with when it was kind of purported that these guys were from the WWF trying to shut down WCW, it made sense. But then obviously for legal reasons, they had to say they're not.
Yeah, but then as we've discussed many times, this is a great time to bring it back up anyway. So sod it. Their whole MO with the storyline is they've got the big money backer who'd be soon revealed as Ted DiBiase. They seduced Eric Bischoff shortly after the powerbomb incident into being on, so they've got the matchmaking, the executive power. They'd grow in numbers, and they ascended to the throne. They became the boss. And as we've discussed in various different episodes, that makes sense. If you're bad people doing a hostile takeover, you complete your takeover, and then while you are in that position of power, you're looking to just attack everything that WCW fans and the whole essence of professional wrestling would hold dear, which they almost had with the sold out 97. But the problem was that was a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
That's an event you expected people to pay for. You've kind of got to just have them, like ruining half the TV show. They're doing the half and half of the 2-hour nitros. They could have maybe done the thing where they absolutely sully an hour and they just mock professional wrestling, they mock WCW and the Southern thing and all that. And it prompts the rally where they're this big, huge conglomerate now of like 100 wrestlers or whatever it is, including some no-name jobbers. That's what makes it cool when the Stings, the DDPs, the Horsemen reverse the roles and do what the NWO did here this summer.
Now, while we've been talking about all that, there is a tremendous match going on here, and it's a rematch from Great American Bash of Rey Mysterio challenging Dean Malenko again for the cruiserweight title, which he unsuccessfully challenged for at that pay-per-view. But he since, as I mentioned here, he beat Psychosis at the Bash at the Beach last night to get this opportunity, and this is kind of a great match to put on to warm what could be a cold, not that much of a wrestling fan audience. I mean, I don't know how many wrestling fans there are and how many just holiday makers there are. I mean, the front row is filled with elderly Floridians by the look of it, who aren't particularly knowing what's going on between these two.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people make the obvious thing of, oh yeah, start a show off well with a good match, put the good wrestlers out and have a good match, and that's not incorrect per se. But for me, I think the deeper mechanic of it for an open, and we talk about Art of the Open on the pay-per-view episodes all the time, Dino, and I think for me, what you want, and this is what both Malenko and Mysterio can bring, is you want to minimise the breaks. You want a higher tempo. You want two people who can go 10 minutes breakneck speed without needing much of a rest. You want two people who are fluid enough in the chemistry where they don't have to take big pauses to figure out what move is next. You just, because that completely hooks them in. Even if this is a match that would get a 3-star Meltzer rating or a 5-star Meltzer rating or anything in between, if you can tick those boxes of the energetic, relentless action, I think that's the best way to go for the casual audience.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a really good moment where Mysterio was going for a sunset flip. There was a bit of a miscommunication. Malenko thought it was a sunset flip. Mysterio thought it was a backdrop. they kind of ended up halfway between the two with Mysterio lying on his back. Malenko just immediately goes over to make the cover to just fluidly carry on with the match.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's covering up a ricket, and it's like, you and I will see that and know what's going on, but a lot of the crowd, it just looks like a normal part of a match.
Well,
It's
that's
no
what they
problem.
always say,
That's the
isn't
way
it?
they do it.
Never repeat the spot, because that makes it obvious to everyone. Carry on, be naturalistic about it, because at the end of the
Yeah,
day, these two are in conflict. A conflict can get ugly and scrappy. Play into that, lean into that. What I was more curious about there was that we just had a spot where Dean Malenko strapped on a camel clutch for a little while. And while I was listening to you, I was also sitting there thinking to myself, right, let's see if they have managed to hook this crowd in with the first 5 minutes of action. Because if they have succeeded in doing so with that breakneck speed, when he did take that first rest hold with the camel clutch, you want to see, are the fans invested in Rey getting out of it? Have they managed to draw them into the dichotomy of the match to the point where he
yeah.
does that first wear down hold? Has he got them? And it was kind of a yes and no. There was definitely a bit of a reaction. It wasn't much, was it? You could hear some cheers for Mysterio's attempt to fight out, but you'd ideally want to try and hook him in a little bit more if you could. But it wasn't a dismal return, I didn't think.
No. So I mean, I'm still trying to find out why they were recording. I mean, because they did a fair few tapings at Disney Studios, didn't they? But um, all I've found out so far is basically that they were doing all their tapings in Orlando for the month of July. So they did their Saturday night tapings in Orlando. They obviously did Nitro, um, but I don't know why. I'm trying to find out if there's a reason. I don't know if anyone else can fill in the gaps here for us.
Yeah, it will take a little bit of research. This is one of those things where very often you and I, Dean, will try to minimise the amount of research we do, so we can come into this with fresh eyes and enjoy it as a fan. Obviously, we undo all that by talking about the psychology of time and the rest hold and things like that. But it does seem to help our freshness with it without looking up the results and match times and other such trivia in advance. It really does help. So, but after the fact, you're right. Maybe we should do a little bit of digging and just confirm on that, because we'll obviously be doing a few watch-alongs through this period.
Yeah, I mean, I know the Olympics were on in Atlanta in summer of '96. I mean,
Yes.
that ruled out Atlanta as a venue, but I don't know why. And unless it's something to do with CNN centre that they're based in, I don't know. That's the only sort of thing I can think of.
Do you know what I think it was, Dean? They knew that in the month of July 1996 that it was coming home, and they knew they couldn't compete with it, so they just did a batch. Just thought, right, allow it to come home. It's coming home,
Football, yeah.
and once it has come home, then they can go back to business as usual. And then just the complete freak turn of events, we were robbed, and it did not come home.
Oh, Mysterio just went for a quabrada moonsault there and
Went splat.
missed. Yeah, and it was one of those where Malenko kind of walked towards him, grazing blow, and then fell down. And not good when that happens. But hey, that is, as we say, that is why they call them high risk maneuvers, because you can go splat.
I mean, it's,
And
it's interesting looking at this crowd. There's a lot of these guys who are into it. Do you know what? I feel like the biggest problem with the noise measurement, because the decibels are far higher now. I think it might just be the lack of acoustics.
I mean, the crowd are definitely reacting to things. And they started off quite cold, and as this match has gone on, they have warmed up a hell of a lot.
Yeah, it's just that I think I could hear some getting into when Malenko ended that high tempo start to the match, when in the camel clutch. I could hear some good reactions, but it didn't hear that big. Oh, here we go. Super Gutbuster, one of
Oh,
the
a
best
super
moves of the
gutbuster.
90s. But yeah, I think it might have just been the acoustics of without that in an arena. It does kind of
and that's one of the disadvantages of the outdoor WrestleManias with the acoustics. But obviously the pros are how good it looks. Do you know the other thing I was going to say is this is, and I'll explain this in a minute for our American and other overseas listeners, but this environment to me is the nearest thing you'll get in America to holiday camp wrestling.
Yeah,
where
I can see that.
You've got a crowd of, so basically holiday camps in Britain on coastal resorts where you basically you get hang on, Mysterio's just won the title with a Hurricane Rana. Crowd are loving it. We've got a new champion. We've kicked off the Nitro Disney tapings with a title change. Fantastic.
And that is the landmark first cruiser title win of Rey. He'd hold that belt many times, including a few times with the WWE logo on it.
Indeed, yeah. So yeah, a holiday camp is where you have, it's all inclusive. It's you got all the entertainment, all your food there. You pay to stay in this camp for a week or whatever, and they have entertainment brought in. And one of the traditional things you get in holiday camps for entertainment is wrestling. And I've told the story before about Bryan Danielson coming over to the UK, doing the holiday camps and learning all about characterization and getting a reaction out of a crowd who aren't wrestling fans. You've got a completely cold crowd who don't know wrestling. And that is similar here to perhaps to what we've got in the Disney tapings, where you've just got Disney holidaymakers coming to watch a wrestling show.
Yeah, I'm a little distracted now because we've gone to Mean Gene in the locker room, who has the Steiners and the Nasty Boys together as a foursome for an interview, which, given that you also love Halloween Havoc 90, they're arguing now. It didn't last long.
Yeah, shut up, fat boy. Yeah,
they should not have. Was that a Scott Steiner fat shame before it became a meme?
Yeah.
There's no Abyss or Bully Ray around for him to call. He's fat, but or Samoa Joe was the original in TNA, wasn't he? And I tell you what, credit to Sags. Sags is referencing their 1990 feud. That's better. So don't put these two teams side by side. They've been to war. They hate each other.
So are they teaming up or are they against each other later? What's going on?
It's not overly clear, but it is circling around Harlem Heat having what both teams want, which is the tag titles.
No, right. I'm just looking. These two have got a number one contenders match coming up later on.
Yeah. So it's the old Bret Hart and Roddy Piper or Rock and Chris Jericho where they interview the opponents. Because they're technically baby faces, so I suppose they're in the same locker room, but they're about to fight and they don't like each other. So there's that tension. It's a fair. I do like that device when used right. To be fair,
I feel sorry for Mean Gene.
I don't. The man is just everywhere, doing all the interviews, getting it all done. He did not look phased in the least bit. Maybe because he knows that coming up is Ric Flair and woman, oh woman, won't you marry me now? Maybe that's why Mean Gene was smiling.
They did say in the previous match that I believe it was Flair defending. Yes, Flair. So Flair won the United States heavyweight title at the pay-per-view, beat Conan, if you remember. He has his first title defense tonight, and you know who he's facing?
Who's he facing?
Jim Powers.
Oh.
Now, all due respect to Jim Powers, but why the fuck is he getting a US title shot?
Why not? Answer me that, eh?
Who's he beaten?
Don't bring up relevant points. Just concede. Make life easy for me and concede.
Just, you're tired, you've had a hard week. You don't want to have logistical arguments when you're trying to watch your favourite defunct wrestling promotion.
No. Actually, on the contrary, I have a new lease of life because when they advertised the replay Bash at the Beach, they used that Seal Crazy ripoff, which those who listen to the Bash at the Beach episode will know that I am I am weirdly fascinated with. It's one of those generic tracks that I just because of the use of it, it just sits in my mind forever in such a happy context.
We've just had a close-up of Mickey Mouse. Does that mean that you could call WCW a Mickey Mouse promotion if you wanted to slag them off?
Or has
Not
Mickey
that
Mouse turned
WWF were
heel?
doing that at the time.
Yeah. Tune in next week to find out.
Mickey Mouse can never turn heel.
Yeah, he can. I mean, let's face it, he's been the heel all along. He torments poor Donald. Donald's the hero. Donald Duck is you and me. He's a normal person who gets angry, makes mistakes,
Doesn't wear trousers.
has an overload of hubris. Doesn't wear trousers exactly. Whereas Mickey Mouse is just that smart ass who pokes fun, tries to be patronisingly supportive, and all along he's just an arsehole. You can quote me on that, by the way. You heard
Mickey Mouse is an arsehole.
Here
come the Blue Bloods. So it's Lord Stephen Regal, Squire Dave Taylor, both from the north of England. Couldn't be further removed from aristocracy if they tried. Along with Earl Robert Eaton, isn't it? From Huntsville, Alabama.
Yes. But they are arseholes in a glorious way. They are entertaining arseholes.
I was going to say from Huntsville, Alabama, but actually we mustn't forget that Bobby Eaton was always billed from the dark side as a singles wrestler.
Well, why not?
Because he can, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be my reply to a lot of things. When I'm this fatigued, it's going to be, well, why not? You'll be like, wow, you fucking got me there.
Go. We've got look, Liam, we've got the photographic recap of the Carson City Silver Dollar match with
Do you know what?
Jimmy Hart climbing up a seemingly 20-foot high pole at the age of 56.
I saw some Twitter accounts recently, and I believe I'm sorry if I've got this wrong. I believe was it Andrew Dice Clay, something like that?
Possibly. I remember I did see it on Twitter. Yes.
Apologies if I've got the Twitter handle a little bit wrong, and apologies for being a little bit negative because tremendous wrestling account, all intents and purposes. A lot of WCW coverage followed us back, which is always brownie points.
Oh, Andrew Dice Clay. So Ian and Andrew combined.
Andrew Dice Clay. Now, honestly, he runs a great account. He's a great wrestling fan. But I believe it was him, and sorry again if it was someone else, who was slating that match as a because WCW moment because they did this huge high pole that was so tall that only Jimmy Hart could climb it. But as I said, it was clearly part of the match finish that Jimmy Hart went up, got it, celebrated, he turned around, and there was John Tenta. Everything about that match made sense. It wasn't a 5-star classic, but as you remember from
match.
it was the storytelling, the booking of it. You know, they paid off a lot of things. But as we've seen from these watch-alongs, the big problem with that was that it weren't like they had this well done act 1 and 2 of a feud before doing a good sense act 3. It was actually John Tenta beating his ass non-stop, pinning him every week, and then he went and shaved his hair again a second time right before the pay-per-view just to try and microwave it for a bit of extra heat. So it's a shame, but I thought the actual Bash of the Beach match was entertaining.
So we've had Hugh Morris and Dave Taylor in the ring. We've now got Big Bubba and Steven Regal in the ring. And because we've got a British tag team, it's easy heat and the crowd are into this. They're booing the Brits. They're chanting USA. And if there's any two wrestlers who will know how to get a reaction out of a cold crowd, it will be these two Brits, because believe you me, they've done plenty of holiday camps. In fact, the first time I ever saw Steve Regal, as he was then called, wrestling was at a Butland's holiday camp.
Yeah.
Where ironically, he was wearing a T-shirt with Florida written on it, a pair of sunglasses, and was pretending to be from America.
I'm
to get the
almost
exact same heat he's getting here.
I am almost certain that just before they've come out to the ring to do this match, here's John Tenner to beat on Ray Trey. That feud's pretty much paid off at Bash the Beach. So here's what I
Yeah.
don't like about this feud. They're just gonna do battle in mediocre one-sided fashion all week, and there's the pin for Dave Taylor. But yeah, it was weird seeing the Dungeon of Doom playing the baby faces there. But I'm adamant that these guys all, before they came out of the curtain, were all like, yeah, leave it to us. We'll get you in the de facto babyface role. We've done these crowds many times. Just follow us.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
but
and they
yeah,
did.
considering we had the Dungeon of Doom kind of baby faces against the Horsemen, considering it's a weird period because they are, we know we're heading to the Giant defend the title against Hogan at the next pay per view, so they are really kind of sort of baby faces. I mean, they're just like the least likable baby faces
Yeah.
since any post WCW babyface in WWE.
Poor Hugh Morris really landed on his head there.
You say poor Hugh Morris, but then you hear the stories about Bill DeMott's training
Oh,
methods,
yeah.
and it's increasingly hard to feel sorry for him.
Very true, yes.
He was very popular as like an underappreciated roster hand, wasn't he? And then I remember everyone was really happy when he got that run as the United States champion very late in WWE's run. People were disappointed he didn't do more in WWE because he was an agile, capable big man. They thought, yeah, he'll be fine. And then you find out what an absolute taskmaster he was and some of the horrible things he did.
Yeah, no, I mean there are people that I know personally who were in that training regime, and yeah, they did not have a good time, and it was all thanks to Bill DeMott.
There seems to be that belief in some that you've got to be like that to be a good leader. Newsflash, you don't. In fact, it's lazy to do it that way. Because
I think that was the Dwayne Bruce method, wasn't it? I think that's what he'd picked that up from the power plant, I'd imagine.
It is to compensate for a lack of skills elsewhere. Because as you say about any department, yourself managing, myself managing, and any other context on TV, a good manager can get the most out of anyone rather than just writing people off or treating them like shit.
So we had a tower there with giant Mickey Mouse ears, which apparently is called the Earful Tower.
See, I told you it was a hill.
So we've now got a match which should be pretty good. Eddie Guerrero and the Nitro debut of Psychosis.
So now I've got thoughts from Ray, who just won the Cruiser title.
What's Ray saying?
Oh, this is about Hogan.
Oh, this is about Hogan. Here we go. We've got the first Poochie promo.
And remember, if Poochie isn't in the room, everyone should be asking, "Where's Poochie?"
Oh, he's now. Well, this is amazing. He's speaking in Spanish, but it just says on the subtitle, "Speaking in foreign language."
Yeah, I love your closed captioning, especially with Mango.
Mango was.
Zabisco's drifted into hill mode still. He's managed to just like make these offhand comments about random babyface on the roster while still being dead against the New World Order. Well, at this point, Dean, I suppose they're still known as the New World Organization.
Organization, yeah. No, Hogan does call them both in that initial promo.
He does, and I know he fluffed the whole thing because New World Order was the plan, as confirmed by Nitro Book and anyone else you ask. I can't get too mad about the idea of the phrase New World Organization. The reason being, Dean, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I find organization to be, at least as a noun, I find it to be a really sinister word. I think it's gloriously evil when you refer to your organisation. It doesn't sound good in any context, does it?
I think also if they were called an organisation, maybe they'd be able to run their own promotion because it sounded more organised.
Well, that's exactly what they tried to do. But yeah, if you say someone, why don't you join my organisation? It does not sound like a good above board thing. It sounds ominous.
No,
It sounds evil. Join my
but then
organisation.
if you said someone join my order, they'd think, what the fuck are you talking about?
Well, no,
They'd think,
they'd think
are
you're in
you getting
AEW.
some chips or something,
They think you're,
or the Dark Order?
yeah, join us, Dark Order.
Yes, join Dark
Um,
Order. Yeah.
Yeah, so here's anyone who's. I know we've got quite a few listeners who are active wrestlers and writers. And first off, thanks for putting up with us for this long, 95 episodes. Secondly, please, someone heed my advice. Use the word organisation for a heel faction. It is a gloriously evil word. I refuse to believe otherwise.
No, it's a very good point.
Syndicate, obviously, is another good one. But then I'm just a Streets of
Conglomerate,
Rage fan.
corporation. Yeah, it's all.
Corporation's been well used. I think we've done wrestling's done
Yeah,
corporation justice. $1 million corporation, the corporation,
yeah. We had the union, didn't we?
the union. And in typical fashion with unions in wrestling, it didn't last long.
Yeah. Well, we had a flip plancher from the top rope to the floor from Psychosis. He was kind of just a little bit off where he needed to be, but Guerrero kind of stepped into it perfectly.
Yeah, can someone tonight please do a dive to the outside and actually land on the guy they're aiming for? Is that
Yeah.
too much to ask?
I'm loving Psychosis's crazy hair. Eddie is selling the shoulder big. Zabisco has queried whether it's dislocated or not.
Yeah, I mean, Zabisco, he has been in this early Nitro era. He's been bringing the commentary outside of his very erratic tone, i.e., where he stands on the heel face spectrum. Obviously, he'd get increasingly self-indulgent. I always found, but on his day, he was a very insightful. He appreciated that he had to, along with a bit of a heel stick and a bit of a smirk and a snarm, he realised he had to bring a bit of insight. He was more Jesse Ventura than Bobby Heenan, wasn't he? Who was obviously like he was the comedy ham, Heenan, whereas
Yes.
Jesse tried to find that balance of. And how many commentators have found that quite difficult? You know, Ventura, we always called him out a couple of times where he tried to take too much out of it. JBL was another good example. Good commentator, but tried to take himself too seriously on commentary, and as a result, ended up putting himself over sometimes more than the talent.
This
It's
is
not an
not your
easy.
job as a commentator. Your job is to put the product and the talent across.
It's not easy to do. I can appreciate it's not easy to do, and that is why that Heenan was so successful, making an utter tit out of himself. Where even if he did insult people, he was clearly the bell end. I always think of Al. You're a fan of Al Murray, Dean?
Yes.
Poblano. I'm a huge fan of him. Now most of his spiel is all very. If you think now in modern parlance, because I was really into his gigs and his DVDs in like the 2000s. And you think of Brexit now, and all of it's very, very close to the bone. But the reason why it was funny hearing him say these things is because he always set himself up where he was the bell end.
Yes.
You know, when he's talking about things should be beautiful
Definitely.
and British, he's being daft. He's the butt of the joke. He's the dope. And that's what Heenan had. Nice Hurricane Rana.
I was just about to say this. They just tried the same sequence that just ended the last match, but Shivani actually referenced it, so it kind of made it work. And Eddie's been selling that shoulder big for the whole match. And he's still selling it now, which is either fantastic selling or he has legitimately done something to his shoulder. But I think it's the former.
Yeah, we've seen how good his selling's been. And he went into that with gusto. That was definitely a selling move, wasn't it?
Yes.
If a wrestler, you'll be far more insightful with this than I am, but I'm very confident in saying that if a wrestler really has hurt his shoulder, he's not going to lead into that spots with such gusto. They're going to be tentative and ginger, aren't they?
Absolutely right. Yeah, you would. It's one of those things that if if you've injured a body part, you avoid that body part essentially. Yeah.
You'll be very reluctant to put that into the post, whereas he just went full speed. He knew what he was doing. He's carrying on his job of selling. He's fine, I think.
Yeah, if someone's injured their ankle, you target the knee to give a supposedly legit reason for an injury, puts them out of the picture for a bit. Eddie's just gone for a superplex, and now he's going up top again for a frog splash.
Nice reception. They really pulled this crowd in.
Yeah, and there's a really good camera angle as well, because the camera was down on ground level right beside Psychosis, so it's almost like he was frog splashing towards the camera. It's really good.
We are getting into a really sweet spot of the product, aren't we? I'm enjoying this setup. The crowd are there. It's not easy work, but they're enjoying the hard work. They kept the one ugly match short and sharp so far. Good character work from the Blue Bloods, as you pointed out. We've had two great matches between four capable wrestlers as well, and everything has hit a note with this crowd.
And what I'm interested in seeing with this crowd is how will they react once we get what I would call the big names coming out, the people who are going to be potentially recognizable to casual fans or non-fans, which we're talking about.
Stings,
Flair, Hogan, Macho Man, and also if I don't know if Hogan comes out at this point or not, but whenever he does come out, the casual fans still want to cheer him.
Well, we've got the world champion, and we've got Jimmy Hart here, but obviously this is going to be geared around Hogan.
So they're now interviewing Jimmy Hart about Hulk Hogan's heel turn.
Let's be clear here that if Jimmy Hart denounces what Hogan did, Jimmy Hart betrayed Hogan first. So let's see how this goes.
Yes.
This is the first time he's ever been lost for words.
As he interviewed, that's all he said. And he used his normal voice as opposed to his Jimmy Hart voice.
Which is fair enough if you're going to play it like I didn't expect him to do that. It's a lot more believable than he did a horrible thing, because you're the fucking Dungeon of Doom. You do horrible things for a living.
Yes.
I do
Sullivan's
like that.
Angry that Hulkamania destroyed itself because they weren't able to do it themselves.
Yeah, I like that line. I really do. They wanted to destroy Hulkamania, and it turns out that it was just this thing. It was this banner he held up and then took away from everyone else. That's some dark comic book stuff if you think about it.
And Kevin Sullivan, the booker, is very keen to stress the name the New World Order.
That's a great point.
It's like get the name right, Hogan.
This is the most personality we've seen from Paul White. He sounds like Paul White here and not the Giant for the first time.
Yeah, just said quite prophetically, so long as he's got the world title around his waist, nothing can go wrong.
Which obviously puts over the doom feeling of when he does lose the belt.
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong in a month's time?
Well, we could lose the belt and then immediately join the New World Order, but yeah, that's not going to happen, is it, Dean?
That's never going to happen.
So in this setting, they've got to be really selective. They're doing screen stuff, which is fair enough. They really don't want to do too much live arena time doing these promos because they've
Yeah,
clearly got they've got you might be right in that it's not a wrestling crowd per se, but it's clearly a crowd that is here for the action. They've come here to
yes.
be entertained. They want to sink their teeth into it. So if you do a bunch of promos, you're probably going to lose them fast. And we've seen a couple of episodes like that, haven't we? You keep
Mm.
wheeling out well-known wrestlers, good wrestlers, combinations of the two. That is how I would. And I've never booked a thing in my life. Don't get me wrong, but just using that perspective, that's how I'd book for a casual audience. Is I'd give them a lot of action.
Yeah, but it's not even just for a casual audience because I remember with the FWA when the wrestling channel launched and we started putting shows together for the wrestling channel, and the dynamic of the shows changed because it became too much segments and skits and interviews to fill up TV time and not enough matches because they wanted a 3 hour taping to cover like 4 hours of TV or something,
Mm.
and it just meant that the live crowd lost interest because it wasn't what they were used to seeing, as opposed to just recording the matches and then recording other bits at other times.
Yeah, I can only imagine how hard it is to do it because you can obviously wheel out a big old list of wrestling matches at a TV taping, but then you lose the rhyme and reason. And you can
Yeah,
give the crowd lots of promos and stuff to give them that rhyme and reason, but you can lose their interest in the actual wrestling. Whereas
yeah. I
obviously
mean, I
successfully you're being able to deliver the rhyme and reason in the wrestling, and you don't need much more than a quick 60-second soundbite or a quick angle of physicality.
yeah. I mean, I remember when TNA would come over to Wembley Arena every January, and it started off the first few years were house shows, and then they realised this is the biggest live attendance that they had all year, and very wisely they chose to make them TV tapings. And the, as a viewer, the show wasn't as good because there was exactly as you say, Liv. There was less action. There were more skits. There were more interviews. It dragged. It went longer. Obviously, on TV, it looked fine, but as a live attendee, it wasn't as good. But obviously, the TV attendance massively outnumbers the live attendance. So you have to aim for the TV audience.
Yeah, but you know who always was quite good at getting the right balance between giving that storyline to make things move forward. So it's not just a list of matches, but also not putting in too much dead time for a crowd. And you and I attended one of their shows together when they came to UK. Is New Japan Pro Wrestling, because they
Mm,
would put on a list of matches, and as you know, half of them would just be great big massive tag matches that combine and marry together various feuds and issues, and just with one select this guy beating that guy at the end, or one little stare down after the bell, or
yeah.
one thing where a guy just grabs their belt and says this will be mine next. With that, you've got something to sink your teeth into in the storyline sense, but then you're still running through the action. So I feel like I could easily take a non-wrestling fan to Royal Quest that you and I went to, or something like that,
Mm.
and they'd get what they need, and they'd also get enough storyline for it to just, because you don't want it to just be a bunch of moves at the end of the day. You want things to resonate.
Well, any wrestling match should tell a story. Even even a cold match. I mean, I'm thinking, what we've been watching, things like Eddie Guerrero and the Barbarian, a cold match, but that had a self-contained story in it.
Hmm. Eddie's just been smashing it on these early Nitros, hasn't he? He had a
Oh,
little
absolutely.
period where he just disappeared for 2 months. Maybe injury, we'll have to look that up. But he's back now and he's doing exactly what he was doing in those 95-hour-long episodes.
Yeah.
See, now the Steiners,
25-hour-long episodes.
yeah, I was just going to say, the Steiners get a crowd into it just by getting it more stiff. And in the Nasties, they've got a team who will happily take that and give it back, to be fair.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
You'll remember
that
we
is also
referenced.
something. Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say we referenced that Halloween Havoc 90 match these two had. We've done that, shown that. Anyone listening who hasn't checked that should go and check it out and see what we mean about two teams who just go and beat the shit out of each other.
Absolutely. What a match that was.
Mm.
But no, what I was I forgot what I was going to say now.
I feel bad now. Hashtag
Should
5
do.
concussions. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be
No,
something extremely observant and fantastic and insightful.
it was definitely.
Was it related to these two teams beating the crap out of each other? Because that was the.
Oh yes,
topic.
I remember now. It was something. Oh bloody hell! He just smashed him across the face with a chair. That looked brutal. No, I remember. I remember going. We had once at a show I was doing. We had a seminar with Danny Boy Collins, great British wrestler from the 80s and 90s. And one thing he mentioned to the trainees there when I was watching while I was setting my commentary position was he said, sometimes you just want to be a little bit snug or just make people question if that was real or not. Because he said where you've got your dads or mums who may not be wrestling fans, but they've been like dragged along because their kids want to go to the wrestling or something. If you can just do something that puts a little bit of doubt into the casual fan or the non-fan's mind, it kind of does you good. And I guess that's from that old school mentality of protecting the wrestling business. And I'll never criticize anyone for that because I still think it's something that's important. But it was an interesting little bit of information that I hadn't heard before. But it's a very valid point.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I've always been more of a make the fans want to believe over make them believe. And there's grey areas in that, but I think above all else, it does tie into what we said about the first match of this show. In the stiffness, it just stops the fans from overthinking or their minds wandering, doesn't it?
Mm.
So you just give them that to draw them in more, just like the sheer pace, the breakneck pace of that first match between Mysterio and Malenko did the same. Obviously, these two teams would do it by. Oh, that was a very ropey finish. The match actually was that a botch or?
I didn't even see the referee count to three, but we had Sister Sherry and Colonel Parker come out, and Sags got, I think, accidentally hit with the cane and pinned, but it was pretty much out of nowhere. And the other problem was because fans were standing up, you couldn't actually see Jerry Sags lying on the canvas. That's cut to a different camera angle.
That is a shame because these two teams were going at each other quite well. I do enjoy a little bit of that sometimes. Got some fireworks going off, and it does remind me of the point I wanted to make. We had the midway, the 1 hour countdown during that match, didn't we, Dean? You saw that. Now, these fireworks going off at the end of the match are quite nice. They're nice fireworks. The thing is that the traditional, when that little dynamite graphic in the bottom corner goes off, and it's the end of hour one, the start of hour two, we get fireworks then normally, but in this instance, it was more akin to the show at the end of AEW Revolution, the Exploding Ring. I had to make that reference, sorry.
Mean Gene is now in the ring with the Nasty Boys.
They've just leave them alone, Gene. They've just lost a match in really weird, ugly fashion. But obviously, Brian Knobbs is going to want to put over Hulk Hogan at this stage.
Of course.
Sag says
I think
it's about
Sag
attitude, and theirs has always been nasty. I can see where he's going with this.
Yes.
Well, I thought I did.
Apparently, getting twatted in the head with a cane has done something to Jerry Sag's brain. Change is inevitable.
He's turned into a philosopher. That's what he's changed. He's got some fire in his promo. I'll give him that much. Hmm. I thought we were going down the Hogan route, but no, he's talking about that match. I think
Yeah.
this is just all really ugly. You can still hear the fireworks going off. Nobbs is telling Gene off for pulling the microphone away early. He did not pull it away early. Sags had finished.
Even though his last sentence made no sense. I think they are talking about Hogan now.
Ah, here we go. So Brian Knobbs is taking a different route.
Is this the Nasty Boys desperately trying to join the NWO?
Maybe, or maybe they're
Basically, that
trying.
just basically sounded like, so, Mr. Knobbs, why do you want this position?
Yeah. Maybe they're trying to do a thing where obviously they have the WWE links. They're trying to keep that thing going subtly without getting in trouble. I don't know. I do remember there was this wouldn't come for a few months, if I remember. But there is an angle where the Nasties come down to the ring dressed in like knockoff pound shop NWO gear, wanting to join, and then they just get the crap beaten out of them after they get being strung along for a little bit. Do you remember that?
I can't say I do, but I'll
5
take your word for it.
concussions.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell you what,
Oh, is this Jim Powers
it is.
running to the ring?
He may be cannon fodder for the new US champion, Dean, but he's got decent generic babyface music. You cannot deny that.
And some magnificent singlet design.
Just give me an 80s guitar riff and that'll do the babyface. And by the looks of things, several needles as well.
He's got ring gear that looks like it's made out of tinfoil.
It's the only thing that'd fit after he like hit inflate on his physique.
And the fireworks are lighting up the sky again for the Nature Boy.
Still going off.
Yeah, it's nothing less than Ric Flair would expect.
Liz in leather has become Liz in latex this week.
Indeed. Woman and Deborah in evening gowns.
This feels I don't know if it's the fireworks or the open air setting. This feels subdued for a Ric Flair entrance.
I think it is the sort of the non-standard entranceway. I mean, you've got the WCW sign way back in the distance, and then this kind of nondescript entrance aisle.
He usually always commands all eyes near me. He'll throw in a bit of antics, but it's all quite subdued for her. Obviously, we'll have the US title belt being unveiled under the robe in a second.
Eric Bischoff is talking very seriously about what happened last night. And Heenan just said, I've been giving you my opinion for the last 20 years and everyone thinks I'm a buffoon and a joker. So Heenan is basically feeling justified, which I know takes us back to the whose side is he on comment that we discussed in that pay-per-view review with Robert Nichol.
Thus further enforcing how right I am in that debate on the podcast and the piece I wrote about it for Hooked on Wrestling. If in doubt, just assume I'm right, basically.
I see. So we're just getting clips of Ric Flair beating Conan for the US title.
This was such a random match, wasn't it? There was no hype
Yeah.
for it. I think they put on the Nitro before this pay-per-view, they referenced that it's Ric Flair Conan, and that was it.
Yeah. Oh, it was, yes, woman hitting Conan in the eye with her shoe that cost him the title.
This is obviously the result of this one's not in doubt. So I'm guessing we're just gonna put over the new champ here, establish that he has the belt.
Mm-hmm. There's no banquet table here at MGM. Terribly
Yeah,
disappointed.
I'm tempted to just tune that, to be honest. We'll call it here, yeah?
Well, I'm worried that this is the end of the banquet table era.
Then that might be the end of this podcast series. We'll
I've
start a new
got,
one because banquet tables.
yeah. But our hometown on Twitter will always be Ric Flair's banquet table. Apparently, Elizabeth will do anything if the price is right. Be careful what he says.
Well, we're guessing here, much with Randy Savage. This is going to be Ric Flair slotting his opponent into his favourite formula, giving him a lot, and then wrapping things up.
You would think so. But the crowd are giving the woos to Ric Flair. I mean, oh, look, everything's right with the world. Woman is cheating. That's how we like it.
He looks a little bit like Scott Steiner at this stage, doesn't he? With the singlet and the balloons on his arms and the hair.
The balloons on his arms.
I mean, let's not sugarcoat it here. Call it as it is.
What's amazing is watching Woman Elizabeth and Deborah all lined up in front of the hard camera, and Woman is pounding on the mat and shouting Flair's name and reacting to everything, and the other two are just standing there.
Yeah, the other two are there because Woman is there, and they figured that it makes sense to stand next to the person who's in the same entourage as them. Woman is doing the work of three valets, and I'll be the first to say that Deborah at times was pretty good as a valet. She got she gave some confident promos at times. She did show a little bit of personality walking past the camera. She was pretty good, but here you're right. She's more Liz than Woman at the moment. It is early on, isn't it, for her?
Yeah, very early. Some great chops from Jim Powers, sold brilliantly by Ric Flair, who takes the backdrop out of the corner. Did you see the video this week of Andrade suplexing Ric Flair into a swimming pool?
Absolutely, I did. That was funny.
And the
That's
thing
how
that
you
I
know he's been
absolutely loved,
accepted into the family.
yeah. But the thing that I absolutely loved about that was, you know how Ric Flair lands on one side of his back because of the lump he's got in his back following the plane
That's the
crash.
first thing I looked for. I asked myself, does he still
Yeah,
bump
there
on
you
his
see,
side if it's water?
yeah, and there you see that lump, and yet pure muscle memory, he landed on that side of his back. It was tremendous. I loved it. Pure muscle memory. And Flair's in trouble, and he's poked Jim Powers in the eye.
Yeah, in other news, water is wet.
Ric Flair is going up to the top and is about
I
to
wonder
get
what's
cut
going to
off.
happen here. It does always bring me back to that infamous early Nitro match he had where he knocked someone's spark out with a foreign object, dragged their carcass to the side so he could put their feet on the ropes, and then rake their eyes after winning the match.
Epic shithousery, as we have said before.
I have to track that one down and dig. I'll get one of the guys who does gifts or whatever to. We need that in our lives in gift form, don't we? I think it's probably a little bit too obscure to be picked up by the usual. You know, because it's that obscure, the usual GIF artists like Lariato probably haven't picked it up, and because none of them haven't picked it up, Alan Cheapshot hasn't been able to plagiarise it yet. Can I say that?
I'm not commenting. And Jim Powers misses a charge into the corner, and Flair chop blocks the knee, and I believe the end is nigh.
Yeah, I feel this is just as familiar a part of the Flair formula as the press slams and the eye rakes. He's going to add
knee drop to the knee.
Yeah, little extra damage first. Got to soften him up. And now we go to school.
Yeah, he's just yanking on that leg. And yeah, here we go. Figure 4. This is one of the few times I think we will see Ric Flair win. Yes. I think it's one of the few times we'll see Ric Flair win with a figure 4 leg lock, actually. But yes, I didn't notice that at first.
He made a point of reaching out for Woman, who, as you can imagine, more than gladly obliged with putting everything she could into a pool of that, just to make sure they got the inevitable submission. That has made my day. Here are the Horsemen.
That reminds me of a time I was managing the late great Drew McDonald in a match against Dave Taylor, who we saw earlier on actually, and Drew put Dave Taylor in a figure 4 leg lock, and without saying anything to each other, Drew and I both put our hands out to one another at the exact same time to do that gimmick. just instinct.
So we are rolling through this episode so far, thankfully, because I don't know if we mentioned this, but we're knackered. But it's a good episode so far, especially with all things considered.
And Mean Gene is now with the Horsemen, and of course, Woman is right next to him, stroking his arm, and he has just told Woman to try and restrain herself.
Narrator says she did not try to restrain herself. Here we go, straight back on it. Do you think the reason why she always wears those long gloves is because she doesn't want to leave any evidence that she was on Mean Gene?
Or indeed any evidence of cheating and raking people's eyes.
Mm. Oh, here's Arn on Hogan.
Mm. So the Horsemen have never tried to be role models or claimed to be. And they're saying that Hulk Hogan always said he was a role model. Yeah, train, say your prayers, and take your vitamins, as he said. What a surprise. An awesome Arn Anderson promo.
You're supposed to stand for something. That is good. That is movie stuff, isn't it?
Oh, hang on. Ric Flair's just grabbed a bottle of champagne. Is there a banquet table?
God, I hope so.
He's poured a glass for Woman.
And now we're going to hear from Mango.
Mango, indeed.
The apocalypse is coming. But it's not Hogan, it's the Horseman. I like that reference. 4 Horsemen. Oh, Flair's tapping into his usual.
Putting over Mango.
You know, outsiders, insiders. Woman is upping the intensity of her feeling up Mean Gene.
I mean, nowadays this would be harassment, wouldn't it?
But who's going to file that complaint? I wouldn't.
Where's Benoit? He's conspicuous by his absence. Oh, no, he's not right at the back, is he? No.
And
Ric Flair starts singing La Cucaracha.
Just like he did at the pay-per-view, which is one of them things that is always like Do you know you've had like some long-time friend guests on like Mike White, and you guys have talked about like in-house jokes and little
Yeah.
moments about wrestling. Those that always make you all crease up. One of those for me and my friends was the promo that Ric Flair did at Bash of the Beach, where he just starts singing La Cucaracha because he's wrestling Conan. You can't do that in 2021.
So we've still got we're back to Bischoff and Heenan at the desk at the back of the studios here, still talking about what happened at Bash at the Beach, which obviously they're going to. And Bischoff is basically now listing the top liners in WCW and how, as we've said, they're all united in this war against the NWO, the outsiders.
Yeah, and one of the great points we made on that Bash at the Beach podcast was that they didn't get beat, they didn't lose. The top stars those did not lose that match. But obviously the sheer bombshell Hulk, it was definitely advantage NWO on that night. They were standing tall, they had the grins on their faces, but they didn't beat anyone. They made a point of doing the fake pinfall on Savage, didn't they, with Hulk counting it?
Yeah. So we're now getting the photographic stills from the main event of Bash at the Beach. Oh, of course, yes, Luger has stretched it off, and we don't know how he is currently.
He's definitely full-blown babyface now.
Yep. What's the deal between C and Lex Luger? They're on the same page now.
So it looks like Benoit was not with the Horseman for that promo because he's about to wrestle next against the Pitbull, Sergeant Craig Pittman.
He's finally got himself a manager in Teddy Long.
But he got rid of the T-shirt that made him famous. The beatings will continue until morale improves. That was such a good phrase.
That is a great phrase. The beatings will continue until morale.
Yeah, he had a T-shirt with that on.
That's amazing. I've forgotten about that. Hashtag 5 concussions. Now, I've got to mention that this is the only venue I've ever known where there's a palm tree in the middle of the entranceway. And by a palm, I don't mean an inflatable palm tree. Or it might not even be a palm tree. Oh, no, it is. Yeah, it's a palm tree. It is literally like 50-foot high palm tree they have to walk around.
Well, that's how you can tell that Titus O'Neil isn't a wrestler yet and he isn't on his shows because he hasn't run headfirst into it.
And I guess the palm tree was there before the entrance.
Well, that's semantics.
So again, we've got a match here where the winner is blindingly obvious, but let's see what the match is like.
I mean, I don't know about that. I think Benoit's got a chance. Don't write down his chances yet.
Okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
But just remember, he'd better cheer up soon because the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Indeed. Big German suplex from Pip.
He's off to a bright start. And why not? When you've got a wrestler who will bump like that for you, why not? They're going to follow the early credo here, aren't they? Fast pace, no resting, and they'll have the crowd.
And make it look stiff.
Yeah.
They're putting everything into the offense. They're putting everything into the selling.
It is weird seeing Teddy Long manage, even though we've known him as a manager for so long.
I remember him in the early days during the, I think, 1990 time with Norman the Lunatic.
Yeah, we've covered many a pay-per-view from the early 90s with him managing Johnny B. Bad and Doom, but still just the GM. I suppose it's a testament to his phase as GM, and obviously also to meme culture that kind of like really dwarfs everything else he did.
Mm. And Bischoff just said on commentary, there's probably more Hulk Hogan merchandise on sale in garage sales than any time before in history.
What he left out was that it wasn't the fans who took it to the garage sales. It was WCW because they can't force them upon the people in the front row anymore.
Yeah. Here's a T-shirt. You will wear it. Benoit has got
That's the
a version of
crossface.
the crossface on, and Teddy Long is in the ring. Teddy Long, I think, has submitted on behalf of his client.
That is that's another awkward finish on this show.
Mm.
Yeah, that
That
could have
is an
been a
odd thing. You maybe if you're going to do that, just throw a towel in or something.
yeah. I mean, these things get rehearsed. Well, they should get rehearsed. They get discussed backstage. Obviously, the finish. So surely a lot of wrestlers, Dean, will be thinking, right, how do we do this to convey it best? But they've just gone
Yeah,
out there and winged it, and it's come off very awkward.
yeah. And I believe now we've got Arn Anderson's music.
Oh, one of our favourite entrance themes, isn't it?
Oh, definitely.
Speaking of
I
which,
mean,
go on, you say first because I'm going off on
as
a tangent in a sec.
I was going to say, I mean, it's the Horseman music as a collective, but we identify it most with Arn Anderson.
Yes, and they would then later develop a new Horseman theme, which will be, I think, the final WCW Horseman theme. And you know that one as well. It's pretty famous, well known. Is it just me, or is that 98-99 Horseman theme the very clear inspiration for AEW's Pinnacle theme? Now, if you've heard that,
I can't
it
remember now.
sounds a
But that
lot like the 98 Horseman song.
I would have to have a listen to them both. I can't
Hmm.
think of it off the top of my head. So here comes a very subdued Sting.
Oh man, I was gonna say Sting and Arn Anderson have both told a huge story with their faces alone making their entrances.
Mm,
Considering they've gone back and forth in singles and tags on Nitro since it began, they've already given this very samey, very familiar match a different feel.
yeah.
Heenan's
So
really putting over Sting's fighting spirit at Bash at the Beach.
mm. Bischoff is supposedly getting messaging here. We may have guests. They're
Uh
telling me in
oh.
the back, which obviously means the outsiders.
Mm. And as I said, one of my favourite hidden highlights of this coverage has been the fact that Bischoff really goes out of his way to not use their names, and I
Mm,
always like that. Arn offered a handshake at the start of this one, and Sting just glared at him.
So yeah, this match might have a different feel to it because it's based around the overarching storyline with
Yeah.
Bash at the Beach. And Bischoff has now, for the third time, kind of plugged the fact that they'll be showing pictures of what happened in a little bit during this show. But he's also mentioned that the pictures don't tell you the whole story, which obviously is carny for by the encore presentation, you fuckers.
Yeah. Give me your money.
Indeed.
I mean, let's face it. Just about everything said and done in wrestling is code for "give me your money."
Yes.
Some in an above board, fair enough way. Take it or leave it, up to you if you want to give your money to this company. Some in a global false gold way.
Global force.
I'm really pulling these references out my arse today, aren't
I can't fault you for it.
I?
Really can't.
Thank you. I consider that to be a doffed cap. Oh, Arn's going for a pole drive on the floor. He's not messing about. He's gone from offering pretty much handshake to trying to break his neck on the concrete,
On the floor.
which is on brand for the Horseman.
Yeah. And I had a little bit of very small amount of buffering there, but I think we're okay. I think we're still going to be more or less in sync.
Okay, as long as we're by and large, we'll keep rolling on. We'll do this, unscripted, unplanned.
Yeah. Well, on my version, Arn Anderson is just climbing back into the ring. He's just gone through the ropes. There we go. He's in.
And now we've got the ad break that's not going to be an ad break for us.
Indeed, the ad break where they go to a long headlock for the live audience, as we have another Blood Runs Cold promo.
That's the second one this show. They're starting to amp it up a
Yeah.
bit, sort of. But yeah, you're right in that they probably are going for just a rest hold. And one thing I did think about that early start to match, aside from the pole driver spot, is they're working that very slow pace, which is understandable in the tone, and is also refreshing considering we've had everything else on the show. But you could also hear in the crowd the kind of, do you know when the noise and the voices fracture because they're really not hooked onto a slow burner. So it'll take a few sting flurries, I think, to get the decibel levels back up. Is what I'm suspecting.
Yeah.
Oh, leapfrog attempt into a spine buster. We've talked about simple spots that just look beautiful with this, and that was one of them.
And I mean, the Arn Anderson spine buster is usually him sending people off the ropes, but yeah, that was a different setup, but the same great execution. Apparently, a black limousine has pulled up. Yeah.
This is not a good thing, says Bischoff.
Thinking about the ratings.
So I really like how much
Bischoff is. Sorry, you go for it.
I was just gonna say I like how much commentary you're talking about how Sting was showing a newfound level of physicality last night, and obviously it's hard to tell what he's thinking in this slow burn of a match. We are seeing those first stages of the transformation, you could say.
Ah, this is true. Yes.
The prelude to his whole revamp.
Yeah. And the start of an image which he is still carrying to this day, given that he was wrestling last week on Double or Nothing for AEW.
Dean, I've got to go on another sidebar here. Did you watch that? How good was that tag match?
It was amazing.
How
the man is
shockingly
enjoyable.
Old. Oh man!
And the thing was, it wasn't like it was just a couple of guest pop spots, just tag in quickly, do a spot, tag out again. He pulled his weight, he carried his load for sure.
He did, and yet I also
amazing.
felt. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that was it. It was amazing. it reminded me of when Ricky the Dragon Steamboat wrestled at WrestleMania that time against Jericho.
Yeah.
And it was just like, wow, this is like nothing's changed. This is like the wrestler I remember from 20 years ago.
And that's a good comparison to make, because I was going to point out that even though, yeah, he did carry his fair share, and it weren't like they really reduced him to just like one move, I still nonetheless thought that they timed his involvement and contained it perfectly. And you remember with that Ricky Steamboat thing, they, with a handicap match setting, they ran through, was it Snooker and Piper, doing quick spots. and they built to Steamboat stepping into the ring last. And that's when they pulled off the sequence. So even though he carried his fair share, I thought he was really well protected nonetheless. They got it absolutely perfect as far as how much he did and how much time he spent in the ring. And that finish with a springboard cutter counter to the death drop.
It was just a really good match. Really good match. Arn Anderson in this match has now got Sting in a Boston Crab, which you don't often see Arn Anderson do. And we've just now got the black limo
There
that's
it
parked up.
is. Ah.
So Bischoff is surmising that they could be watching the show from inside their limo. He's also been I was going to say in his head, but out loud, he has been thinking about who is available from WCW to defend them against these guys, should there be any trouble.
I just love the way they're referring to them as they and them. Makes them seem even... The presence is off the charts, and they've not shown up once yet. There's no even guarantee that they're the ones who will come out of that limo on this show. But the presence they're exuding, and it's a testament to everyone else's promo and commentary work.
It is a clear direction, and it works. And it's because it's what you shouldn't ever do in commentary. You know, you shouldn't. It's the old Vince McMahon saying, "Pronouns, pal," isn't it? It's that rather than him and he and they, you give names. But we've just seen. I think Nash has just been walking out of the car, then of the limo.
It's lovely timing, just as the like the long running Sting Anderson match with a slow build is reaching fever pitch. Here they come. This has been timed brilliantly.
There's just Hall and Nash, no Hogan.
Security are not letting them through.
No, there's Doug Dellinger and the indie wrestler police.
And Sting and Arn have stopped fighting. They're side by side now.
Yeah.
Here's Savage.
What I love is the fact that security has here's Savage. Security has a mullet, immediately telling you he's an independent wrestler. Yeah, so I think this is Arn Anderson's just attacked Sting. He went for a DDT. Sting blocked it by holding onto the ropes and is now clamped on the Scorpion Deathlock.
It went very badly for him.
Yeah, it suddenly stopped with them being together to them fighting each other. Now, Savage is trying to fight them because, I don't know if you know, Liam, but Randy Savage is out of control.
Is he?
Apparently
what's the deal between Sting and Lex Luger?
They're on the same page
now. Yeah, we'll have to retire that one.
Yeah, that ship has sailed.
I have to say, Hall and Nash are carrying themselves very much how they did on the last Nitro. Even though obviously we know Hogan now, commentary are talking about it, they are acting exactly how they did before the bombshell was dropped. I'm guessing they're having to do some sort of awkward delay tactic on the angle because Hogan's filming or something. I don't know.
Possibly, yeah. Because he was filming at this point in time, wasn't he? That's why he'd been away for a long time.
We obviously managed to make the bash at the beach. And obviously, the infamous discussions trying to talk him into it were done from a trailer, I remember, in Bischoff's book and also the WCW book. How they'd have to go to Hogan's trailer on set to talk him into doing the turn.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sting is not surprised by the Hogan turn. Oh, from the two outsiders. So he expects it from Hall and Nash. He didn't expect it from Hogan. So, he's saying that Hogan didn't want to travel with the rest of them. He wanted to travel in his own limousine.
Walking on the dark side, that's a reference to that little midlife crisis period, isn't it?
Or Bobby Eaton's hometown.
It's interesting to see that come into play again, though, isn't it?
Mm.
Oh. Says he wipes
So,
out every little kid, every fan who looked up to him.
yeah. Sting's now getting worked out. This is the most lively and passionate Sting interview I've heard in ages.
And just like his match with Arn, he's building up and building up. It's really well structured. It's really nice stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, romance is dead when it comes to me, isn't it?
Oh, you told them to stick it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of you people can stick it. So they're referencing the promo from Hogan.
Always going to be interesting.
You're never going to join the NWO, are you, Match?
It made sense that he did, to be fair. That was I like that as a can't beat them, join them move. You know, you run the feud between Babyface Savage and Hill Hogan that you haven't done before, and then you have him join because the focus then goes on the Stings, the DDPs.
I guess so. Because then otherwise you got nothing for Hogan to do. For Savage to do.
He's quite calm for Savage.
Seeing as he's out of control.
I did hear that about him.
Yeah. Apparently you multiply something by 1,000,000 and then you multiply it by infinity and beyond. Is this Scott Steiner maths class again?
To be fair, then Toy Story had just come out.
The crowd are responding well to these promos. As we said, Savage is a big crossover star. You know, people who aren't necessarily big wrestling fans know who the Macho Man is.
These are two larger than life superstars giving relatively subdued promos over the shock of what happened, and yet they're still putting so much colour and personality and vividness into it, aren't they? It's really good to watch.
Yeah.
Oh, now we've got Hall and
Here
Nash.
we go. These two gentlemen.
They don't deserve names, Dean. You know that.
So Mean Gene just going through what happened last night in the main event. They're still saying we'll see a little bit later. We still haven't seen the photos stills.
That's literally going to be the conclusion of the show, isn't it?
I think so, yeah, the main event. You, sir, as he calls him then, my friend. So Nash is called Gene. He's giving him a name.
WCW and the fans took a beating.
Now, I'm just looking in the background, and I'm sure it isn't this way, just the way it's set up. It just looks like loads and loads of people are walking out of the venue.
Mm.
So you say Hogan's going to be at Nitro next week?
This is a rather awkward promo.
It is.
This is one of those interviews that feels like they're really trying to improvise on time management, isn't it?
Yeah. As loads of people walk out.
Well, Mean Gene implied that maybe Hall and Nash forced Hogan to do this. Well, he looked pretty happy doing it to me.
Yeah. So yeah, they're just calling themselves the Outsiders, which is what they were named on the pay-per-view.
He's claiming they kicked their butts. Obviously, it was a very inconclusive match, but they got the edge.
Yeah. I'd say they won. Even mentally, psychologically, they kicked their butts. Just just called him Scheme Gene,
Yeah,
which was the name that they used in the Billionaire Ted skits in WWF.
they've just confirmed that Hogan's on a set doing a movie.
Yeah.
I gotta say, of all the aura that whole match and angle built up and the storyline as a whole, this promo that I hadn't recalled myself, or even maybe I hadn't seen it when it transpired, because obviously, as I've said before, my viewing during real time of this time frame was sketchy. I didn't watch every episode in
Yeah.
order. You have to pick up on some stuff secondhand. But that promo really humanized them a lot more than it should have.
Mm.
Like it did a little bit of damage to that aura the whole thing had built up. Would have been better if they weren't even on camera at all, to be honest. What we were saying, the presence of the commentators built up without them even showing up.
Yeah.
They'd have been better off just not
So,
being on the show.
and you know, you're right. The last thing we're going to see on this episode of Nitro is the photo recap of the main event last night.
Which itself would have more of an effect if we didn't just see Hall and Nash chat to Mean Gene like they're all down the pub.
It wasn't a very memorable promo. It wasn't a very good promo. I mean, I suppose they're outside the venue because they're the outsiders.
Yeah, but if you've not got access to Hogan for this episode, you might as well just keep them all off screen. Because you've been in situations, in wrestling promotions, where a wrestler is fit and available to to either wrestle or at least appear, but those in charge choose to not to do that because there's more value in them not showing up on that episode. There's definitely been other examples. I'm certain of it, and this I'd say is one of them. There'd have been more presence from this new group if they had just not shown up at all, and you
I
don't
think,
know when they're
yeah,
going to strike again.
it's watered down without, the impact is heel Hogan's first
Hmm.
appearance, which we haven't had. So yeah, we've seen Hall and Nash. The novelty, the focus is now all on heel Hogan.
Oh, Heenan's got some fire here.
Mm.
Oh, this is great from Heenan. Well, do you think everyone's been riding his coattails? No, it's been built because of all of us. That's a babyface turn, if you ask me. So that's a bit better of a finish after that stale Outsiders promo.
Yeah, but a great promo from Heenan, and I don't think it's a babyface turn from Heenan. I just think it's Heenan's still the same character he's always been.
Oh,
He's still a heel,
absolutely, yeah.
but it's emphasising how this action of Hogan has turned the baby faces and the heels together as WCW
Oh no,
basically.
you're right. That's exactly what it was. But with just that little monologue there, if they wanted him in an active on-screen role, he could have easily been a babyface just off the power of that alone. But as
Yeah,
we know, and as I'm sure he was much happy with, he'd stay commentating. Yeah, I mean, if he wasn't going to get lured in full time by the angle that ran into Great American Bash where he sided with a Horseman, if that wasn't going to make him want to want to go on the road and do managing and take bumps, then nothing was going to.
Very true. Very true. But overall, I'd say thumbs up for that show.
Yeah, like it was fun. I know I do tend to really go microscopic and under the hood when I analyse a lot of these things. But then, if we're going to be covering these things, we may as well. We do like to get into the context and the side stories, and we'll analyse and things like that. But at the end of the day, most of those matches were really enjoyable. It was fun looking at exactly how they kept a different crowd on the short leash and kept them engaged in the product. But the two things that just took away from an overall good episode were some of those match finishes that really didn't stick the landing, and that Outsiders promo that just kind of
Yeah.
took a bit of gloss off of them.
Yeah. But I mean, the other thing was, the matches, the two, it was the show was bookended by two longer matches. Both Mysterio beating Malenko for the Cruiserweight belt and the Sting Arn Anderson match went sort of 12 and a half minutes. And then the other matches were shorter. I mean, Guerrero and Psychosis 8.5. But then you got the Steiner's match was 6 minutes, Flair's match was 6 minutes, and Benoit and Pittman was 3 minutes. So yeah, they kept those pretty short.
Yeah, the action was good for the most part. I really did enjoy that Sting Arm match. It just had a different vibe about it, and yet they still kept a good structure, built up the match, got to a crescendo, and that's when the Outsiders came out.
Yeah.
I suppose, bit of a mess with Arn standing side by side against the outside, and then suddenly thinking, oh wait, I've got a chance to DDT him here. But I suppose it's on brand. You can't argue that.
Yeah. And over on Raw, it was a pretty weak lineup on Raw for a recorded edition. They had what turned out to be the Ultimate Warrior's last ever match on Raw. He beat Owen Hart, but before then they had an opening segment where Gorilla Monsoon announced he'd been indefinitely suspended for failing to show up to some house shows, and that was it for him. He wouldn't appear in the WWF TV or WWE TV till that Hall of Fame, of course. Savio Vega beat Justin Bradshaw, and the main event was Vader and Davey Boy Smith v Henry Godwin and Phineas Godwin. So yeah, it was easily one for Raw.
I mean,
so one for Nitro.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, but I've got to say that is it just me that finds that main event could have had really underappreciated hospital potential?
True.
Because the Godwin, I know it was a hideous gimmick, but the Godwins were no slouches when you want them to just get in the ring and tear it up.
Yeah, but they're always Mean Mark Hansberry and Shanghai Pierce to me.
Exactly.
Such a stupid name and stupid gimmick that made no sense, but I bloody loved Shanghai Pierce.
I did love that match they had with LOD. Was it SummerSlam '97? Where they dropped the goofiness of the redneck gimmick, got a little more. They become heel, didn't they? Got a little more jaded, and they just went into this grudge match because it was when Hulk accidentally broke Henry's neck on the Doomsday device, weren't it? I suppose they both did. It was a bad ejection, a bad launch, and he landed right on his head. And so he came back after his injury, and they've had this feud settling match at SummerSlam. And I thought that was a good host. That was up there with the Steiners and Nasties who we had on this show.
Yeah, true, very true. Now I've just looked ahead to next week's lineup.
Yes.
It's not looking to be a classic. However, do you remember who was wrestling when Scott Hall made his initial appearance on Nitro?
It was Mike Enos, or the Mauler.
Yes.
And Steve Dole.
Yes. And the Mauler was the new protege of Colonel Robert Parker, I believe.
That didn't go really to plan, and now Parker was just showing up ruining random tag team matches with nonsensical appearances.
Yeah. Well, next week, Harlem Heat with Sister Sherry will be defending their World Tag Team titles against the team of Rough and Ready, which is Dick Slater and Mike Enos, with their manager, Colonel Rob Parker. So in a roundabout way, the Mauler is back.
The Mauler is back. The real star of May 27th.
Indeed. And the main event has got, again, the WCW's selection of title contenders is very odd because we had Jim Powers challenging Ric Flair for the US title, having never won a match on television. And next week's main event has got Lex Luger defending the World Television title against Big Bubba, who has just lost on pay-per-view to John Tenter.
Who loses all of the matches.
All of the matches, yeah. So yeah, that should be fun. I'm determined to find out why they're at Disney MGM. We're going to have to tweet this out.
We've got more watch-alongs to come. I'm sure we'll squeeze in the pay-per-view episode very soon as well.
Indeed.
Next time we do a watch-along, Dean, I'm sure we'll be more prepared for the whole topic because we've got a little bit of a ride on this, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got there's a community out there that people will know.
Yeah, we got a few episodes of Project Disney, so we've got plenty of time to address it.
Indeed. Right. I think that wraps things up quite nicely for us. Don't forget that you can listen to the entire back catalogue at becausewcw.podbean.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. You can follow us on Twitter at becausewcw or on facebook.com/becausewcw. Quite a lot of new people joining on board on Facebook this week, so welcome
Indeed.
to you. And we'll be back very shortly, as you say, with probably a pay-per-view review coming up next. But yeah, thank you for downloading. And if you like what you hear, do tell a friend. If you think we're rubbish, then keep it to yourself. We'll be back. And so on behalf of Liam, this has been the Twisted Genius saying I'll see you ringside.